Welcome to another episode, beautiful souls, to Pain to Power podcast. Today, I have the joy of welcoming someone whose work moves far beyond the physical world and into the deeper spaces of soul, intuition, and healing. Laura Hoorweg is a gifted, intuitive, medium, and spiritual guide who helps people connect with their soul's wisdom, understand their life path, and heal old emotional patterns so they can step into alignment. Through her platform, Spirit Speaks to Me, that's Spirit Speaks, the number 2.me, Laura connects clients with guidance from Spirit, provides deeply insightful intuitive readings, and supports people in breaking through the emotional and energetic blocks that keeps them stuck. Her approach is grounded, compassionate, and refreshingly honest. And she has a real gift for helping people feel seen on a soul level. We're going to dive into intuition, emotional healing, spiritual connection, and what it truly means to trust your inner guidance, even when life has felt chaotic or painful. I cannot wait for you to hear her perspective. Laura, welcome to Pain to Power. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thanks, Jill. I'm really happy to be here.
Your work blends intuition, mediumship, and emotional healing. How do you describe what you do to someone who's brand new to this kind of work?
Well, there's several different things that I do. I do spiritual counseling, which is a one-on-one, uh, diving into people's questions and helping them discover whether it's they're looking for their authentic self, whether it's they're looking at their mission. I help people even with their businesses. I also do longer term spiritual coaching or intuitive coaching. I don't even like the word coaching. It's more like mentorship, but it's hard to find a word. When you're doing things that are unusual, it's hard to find the language to use it. But what I'm really doing is spiritual mentoring over a longer term. And my program is called Create the Life That You Really Want. And that's what we're really doing. We're helping people to trend. We're helping. And when I say we, by the way, my guides have been bugging me over the last little while to use we instead of I or me in the singular, because it really actually, I think it sounds slightly pompous. So I've actually been in resistance to doing that. But they keep reminding me that it's actually a more accurate description because it's really about me and my guides, my team, and the team of guides and angels of the client that I'm working with. So that's those two things. That's the kind of psychic, intuitive side of my work. The other side is mediumship. And I'm not an evidentiary medium. I use my mediumship skills to help people heal from grief. And I do that in an in-person group setting as opposed to one-on-one, like I do my counseling and coaching. So that's a little bit different. That's really helping people to connect with their loved ones so that they can heal and close that chapter. Because so many people, when a loved one passes, they end up with so many regrets, or they feel bad that they weren't there, or there's a lot of guilt involved, or there's issues with that person that they never got a chance to solve when they were in body. So we want to get those solved because that's what helps people truly heal. Because a lot of people get stuck in grief. I've seen people still in the throes of grief 10 or 15 years after the person is passed. Okay.
Mm.
And there's no reason for that. We're not meant to be grieving that long. We are meant to grieve the person, heal that grief, and move on and with our lives. It doesn't mean we forget the people. It just means instead of being stuck in the hurt and the loss, we then transition into every time we think of that person, instead of feeling the grief, we feel the joy of all the memories and all the times that we spent together when they were alive, which is very different than being, stuck in the grief.
Yeah, I
So
agree with
that's
that.
basically what I do.
Yeah, I agree with that. So for me, my grief and my daughter's passing, I find solace in understanding and knowing that our relationship has not ended. It has just transformed into a different type of relationship. So she's not physically present here next to me, but I talk to her constantly. I
Yeah.
talk to her every day, and I know she's still with me. She's just non physical.
Exactly, and that's a huge part of what these mediumship group sections are about, is people learning those kinds of things, because it's very hard for people, especially if they've never had any exposure to more of this spiritual awakening, to understand those things. And all they see is the person is gone and I'm never going to see them again and I'm crushed, and it can be very, very, very detrimental to the ones left behind, to their lives. And that's See, the people on the other side, our loved ones on the other side, they understand that we need to grieve because we're still in the physical, but they don't want us to keep on grieving. They want us to get past it, heal, and go on with our lives. So even their perspective from the other side is they don't want us, because I can't, even some people have this idea that if they stop grieving the person, that the person on the other side is going to be angry with them. I can't tell you how many times I've run into this belief, and that is a total misconception of how it works. Because as I just said, our loved ones on the other side, they know that we have to grieve, but they certainly don't want us to continuously grieve for them. They want
Of
us to go on with
course.
their life.
Of course. And also, I really believe that if you don't have faith that they do continue on the other side, I can understand how grief would linger longer if you think they are no more, that they are nowhere, that I think that would be a lot harder to work through and move through grief if you didn't have the idea that they're still connected to you.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you just believe they're gone and they're gone, uh, that would be that's a much different thing than understanding the fact that life does go on. It merely transforms. And this goes back to my science roots. One of the major concepts of science is energy can never be created or destroyed. And we are, in our essence, we're not these kind of little meat suits. We are, in essence, energy. We're spiritual energy. So if you look at it from that point, you just know that energy can never be destroyed. So it has to go on. It has to go somewhere. So
Right, exactly.
that's just another point. The other thing I wanted to bring up is what I found in my mediumship sessions is it also helps heal people in other ways. Like there can be, I'll give you an example if you'd like. In one of my group sessions, there was a young man that came through, and actually, none of his immediate or extended family was there, but there was a friend of the family there. And she was given the sacred job of being a messenger to his family and friends. Okay. Which is always in a group, it's always a very sacred gift that you can give to other people. But anyway, this story went that in the 3D that this young man had taken his own life. He had been in a motorcycle accident on his motorcycle. And through the police investigation, because there was no skid marks, didn't look like there was anything that he made any attempt to avoid the accident. And he drove straight into a large tree and unfortunately was killed. So his family it was worse than just losing somebody. Because when you're told that somebody's actually taken their own life, there's a whole nother set of different kinds of grief that's layered on top of that. And the unfortunate thing is, too, he had, young males are very, very they're very, very sensitive. Suicide can actually be contagious amongst young males, especially. And his younger brother, became almost suicidal, one of his good friends, and his family was just absolutely distraught. This situation made a situation where they probably never would have healed from it if they hadn't found out this information. Because what he made very clear when he came through is he took responsibility for the accident, because what had actually happened is he had a really bad cold, and he had taken a lot of over the counter cold medicines, and he knew he shouldn't be on his motorcycle because he'd taken all this medication, but he had been out and he wanted to make sure that he got home because he was sick. Okay. And what had actually happened is he literally fell asleep at the wheel. So there was no intention to take his own life. It was merely an accident. So this information, when it was delivered to his friends and family, changed everything.
I can
Changed
imagine.
everything.
I can
You know, if
imagine
you
that
yeah.
would be a big relief for someone. I'm not a medium, but I've had a couple of medium experiences in my life where I've had to deliver messages, like like something has come through to me, and I've called the person and said, "Hey, this may sound really weird, and I'm sorry to be doing this to you, but this is the message I have from your loved one." Both times it happened to me, it was really welcomed, and I felt very honored that I had the ability to deliver that message. So, doing this on a regular basis must be very gratifying for you.
Oh, it is. And it's gratifying. You know what's really interesting is when I'm in a group, there's usually maybe one, maybe two people that don't receive a direct message from a loved one on the other side. But it's really interesting because it's always those people who come up to me at the end of the session and say, "Oh my God, I thought at first I was disappointed because I didn't get a message, personal message." But they always say, "I got so much out of everybody else's messages that I don't even care, that I don't
Wow.
even care that I didn't get a message from one of the people that I wanted." And there's always a reason that that happens. But even in this case, the gal that got the message, this wasn't a personal message for her. This was she was asked to be a messenger. So, you know, and I always tell people when you're asked to be a messenger like that and you honor that, there's always some kind of gift that's delivered to you from spirit. Okay? It could be a million different things, but there's always because all energy is reciprocal. So if you're giving somebody else this gift, there's always something that is returned to you. And that's not why people do it, but that's the way energy works.
Yeah, I truly believe that. Now, many people feel disconnected from their intuition because of trauma, fear, or conditioning. What are the biggest blocks that you see, and how can people begin reconnecting?
Well, yes, there's there's a lot. The big uptake. I'm just checking. Yep, I'll do this. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. The biggest block, that sort of overall block that I see is when people are disconnected from themselves. Okay? They don't have a good connect. It's the same principle. If you don't love yourself, you can not truly love another person. Okay? So if you're disconnected from yourself, you cannot connect to your higher intuition, you cannot connect to spirit. Because a lot of people think that we reach up to spirit. That's not what happens. Okay. In order to connect to spirit, you have to go in and then up. Okay. So if you're not deeply connected to yourself, you are going to be totally disconnected from spirit, from all your spiritual gifts. You're not going to have the trust. Even if you are receiving messages from your guides and angels, you're going to poo poo them. You're just going to say, "Oh, that's just my imagination. Oh, that's, just wishful thinking." So that's probably the biggest block. And in so many ways, that's the biggest block to so many things in our lives is the fact that we are disconnected from ourselves. And
I
we don't
couldn't
come
agree
in that
more.
way. We don't come in that way. We come in totally as babies and young children. We come in totally connected, which is why young children, I'm talking children under the age of 4 or 5. That's why children, they see spirits, they hear things, they're connected. You see, it's the same with animals. You see animals staring at nothing or little kids staring at nothing, and you're wondering what they're looking at. They're actually looking at something. They're not just staring off, but they see things, okay? But almost immediately, we start being conditioned or brainwashed by family, by schooling, by religion, by media that all these things don't exist. Okay. So
Right.
we're taught to be, think of ourselves as people that we should be instead of the people who we authentically are. So the biggest thing I always encourage people is to develop a deep connection to yourself first. Okay. And one of the best ways you can do that is through self-care. And self-care is a multitude of things, and we can go into that in more detail if you want.
I totally believe in self-care. I believe in exactly what you're saying, learning to love yourself and the fact that we are so conditioned by our external environment. And one thing that I tell people to do in meditation is to ask yourself the question, what would it feel like to go back in time before the world had its impact on you? So to come back to your true essence before any experience, what would that feel like? And that's the true sense of peace and belonging before we were conditioned by the outside.
Yes, and I also talk a lot about that. And there's also a little exercise that you can do that really works well for people is get a picture of yourself. Okay. Find a picture of yourself when you're about somewhere between 2 and 4. Okay. It's probably the best timing. And the closer the picture, the better, because I have people stare into the eyes of themselves as a toddler. Okay. And people can't believe what they see in these eyes. There's that innocence, there's that deep connection, there's that incredible love, and then do that visualization or meditation because that connects you to that energy of yourself. Because a lot of people don't do that, especially as adults. Like, you haven't looked at pictures of you when you were a child probably for decades. Okay. Decades and decades. Okay. So that's one way. And when I speak of self-care, meditation is the number one tool I suggest to people, because literally meditation saved my life more times than one. Okay. And the other thing is, meditate, the 4 pillars of self-care. Meditation covers all 4 pillars, basically physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, all at the same time. Okay. So that's what I go to first. And luckily now, there's so many apps and there's beautiful guided meditations. I always recommend, especially for people who either have issues meditating, they have a hard time meditating, or they're new to meditation, is to use guided meditation first. I've been meditating for decades, consistently, and I still use guided meditation because I never found that silent meditation really works for me because I am off. It's I just
For me, it
I
depends on the day. I've actually done as much as a 1 hour silent meditation. And I had a guy, I listened to this guy explain it one time, and I forget the guy's name, but he said it's like clearing out your email inbox. So
yeah.
when you first sit into a silent meditation, all the thoughts are coming and rushing at you, and you're settling in and you're breathing. And so it's like they just keep leaving until you've sorted through them all and then there's nothing left. So the longer that you sit in silence, the deeper into meditation that you can get to. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I do a variety. So it depends on the day and what I'm feeling. Like some days I'm feeling more connected and I can get into that kind of a meditation, but other days maybe I'm a little tired or I'm a little bit in a guided meditation is useful. I like binaural beats a lot
I was
and
just
things
gonna
like
say that.
that.
Yeah. I don't do full silent meditations, but I will do meditations where I'm just listening to music of some
Mm,
description. This is why I love sound baths too. Sound baths are another amazing self-care tool, okay, for a
yeah.
lot of people. And if you've never experienced it, like the crystal bowls, there's gong meditation. Oh, I love gong meditations. I only discovered gong meditations a few years ago, and they are really amazing because the vibrational um of the music is so different. It literally vibrates every chakra and every nerve in your body. It's very cool.
Oh, yeah. There's a place near me in Plimpton, I'm gonna give a quick plug. Her name is Darnell, and it's the Shanti Shala Yoga Studio. In the summertime, she does in-person gong baths, and she's got
Yeah.
these giant gongs, and I've gone a couple times, and literally the sound goes right
Yeah,
through you.
right into your
Just
body.
feel like you are clearing out all that stuck energy that's it because trauma lives in the cells of our bodies. The
Yeah.
body feels everything. And in order to heal from trauma, you need to release it from your system. So, yeah, I think the gong bats are pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's other things. Now, it wasn't for me personally for a bunch of physical reasons, but the saltwater tanks are really interesting too. And if you've never done it, if somebody's never done it and they're really into silent meditation, you want to get silent, is go do a saltwater tank session. That's like, wow.
Yeah. I'd like to do one I don't know where there is one near me. I would like to try that at some
Yeah, they're
point. So,
becoming more and more popular now.
yeah.
I just can't handle it from a personal point of view because of the salt. I just
Yeah.
My body doesn't react well to the salt, but it's quite the experience because it's really, what do they call it? Sensation deprivation. Because the
Yes.
water, so you're floating. It's like being in the womb, and I really recommend it for people who have any kind of birth trauma. That's why I went in the first place, because I had a pretty rough coming into the world. I have a joke about it. I was born full breech, which means all four paws up and butt first, which
Oh
is a
boy.
very which is a very different. And I wasn't, because I was just squeezed. I didn't breathe for not minutes, but they had to get me breathing because I was so squished. So that's a pretty serious birth trauma. I always make the joke that I started feeling what it was going to be like on this planet, and I decided I didn't want to come, and I turned around and I was trying to come back up. That's the joke. Actually, you know what? I have a feeling that that's not that far from the truth, really, because I had a very challenging childhood, and I've had a lot of trauma throughout my life. So I think I knew. Remember, we talked about how babies and children have
Mhm.
a greater knowing than we do. And I think I knew what I'd signed up for. And at the last minute, I decided maybe I was a little too crazy on how much I signed up for in one lifetime. But
That
anyway,
kind of leads me into my next question. I'd
there
love
you
to
go.
hear your origin story. When did you first realize you had intuitive abilities? And what was your turning point in choosing to use them professionally?
Well, that's a bit of a long story, but I'll try to give you the condensed version, because the spiritual journey, a lot of people think a spiritual journey goes like this. Spiritual journey actually goes like this. There's highs and lows. There's times when you focus on it. There's crests and troughs. So I told you about my birth story. Okay. Then when I was a young child, probably under the age of 7, I had all kinds of weird things going on, which I didn't think at the time were weird. I thought everybody was like that. And I got kind of dissed and shamed and, basically told to be quiet. So I realized that this was not something acceptable. So I kind of shut those things down. Then, when I was about probably 10 or 11, I absolutely decided that I wanted to find out where God and the angels were. Okay. Which is a very strange thing for a child. That My family was not church going. My family was not religious at all. So nobody was going to take me. And then I decided, because of course the wisdom that was around was God was in churches. Gods and the angels, they lived in the church. So luckily, I was only 10 or 11. And the neighborhood that I lived in Toronto, there was about 6 or 7 churches with literally within walking distance. So every Sunday for about 6 to 8 weeks or whatever, I put on my Sunday best because that's what you did in those days, my little patent leather shoes and my little skirt and my little blouse and everything. And off I went to a different church. So I visited, like, I mean, all kinds of different churches, like a Salvation Army church, a Roman Catholic church, an Anglican church, I think a Baptist church. Um, yeah, there was a bunch of them. And what I found that there was a lot of nice people and there was some not so nice people and there was some good music and there was some not so good music, but I definitely learned that God and the angels were not there. Okay? So now I'm 10 or 11, okay? So then after that, when I was 12 in my early preteens and my teens, I was in brownies and guides and stuff, so I got into the outdoors. And actually, I really discovered being in the outdoors and canoe tripping and camping and backpacking and all that, that my cathedral, my connection to spirit was nature, being
Oh,
out in the
I
wilderness.
so get that.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
So then when I was 15, I told you it was a story. So then when I was 15, I was actually working in a Y camp in Northern Ontario. And part of that was rock climbing. I was learning how to rock climb, and we were resting on the top of a cliff, a very high cliff. And all you could see when you looked, it was like being in a huge state park. We were in a provincial park. And there was nothing but beautiful lakes and rivers and trees. You couldn't see a speck of civilization. Okay. Just wilderness is beautiful. And then all of a sudden, I found myself whoosh, and I was out of my body. And I was actually above looking down on me standing there and all my compatriots on the cliff. And then I was just getting used to this, thinking, wow. And I wasn't afraid at all. I felt totally expanded, but I also felt that I was still me. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. And then all of a sudden, that whoosh feeling again. And all of a sudden, I'm above the earth, looking down on the earth. Now, I'm going to date myself here. Okay. Because when I was very young, it was when they did the first moon landings and the first space rockets and everything. And the first time we actually saw the earth from outside of the earth. And the astronauts would talk about how amazing and how wonderful that was. And finally, I understood what they were talking about because I was seeing exactly the same thing. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm just there thinking, wow, this is fantastic. And thinking, what could possibly be next? And just as I thought that, it was like whoosh again. And all of a sudden, I'm out in the middle of the universe. And there's all these different spiral galaxies around. And I look over and I go, oh, there's the Milky Way. And just on that little arm, there's Earth. And I'm just like floored now because I'm just like, what's going to happen next? Like, what's beyond that? And just as I was thinking that, all of a sudden, okay, it was like in Star Trek. Okay. It was like a great big hand came out and grabbed me and like just pulled me back in my body like so fast. It was like a split second. And it was so difficult because I like to say it was like trying to take a basketball and shove it into a Coke bottle. That's what it felt like because my energy was so expanded. It was like it wasn't even going to fit back into my little body. Okay. And it took like 3 or 4 days for this feeling for me to actually feel comfortable about being back in my body. So it was that experience changed the way that I thought about life, the way that I thought about death, the way that I thought about who we really are. Because obviously I was out of my body and I wasn't dead, but I was still me. You know, it just went on and on from there. So that was the basis, that experience was the basis of my whole rest of my spiritual journey.
Now, did anybody that was there with you realize that you had had an experience?
No. And I'll tell you the reason that I got sucked back in my body so quickly, I found out it was because one of the climbing instructors, he'd gotten a bit nervous because he thought I was a bit too close to the edge of the cliff. And he literally grabbed the back of my pants and yanked me back. And that's when I got yanked back into my body.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So no, this seemed okay to me. It probably seemed to be like, I would say this whole experience to me when I was out of my body, it sort of felt like it was timeless, but it felt like maybe like an hour or so. But I'm sure this whole experience probably only lasted a few seconds.
Yeah. I've heard that out of body experiences can feel very expansive and like you're there for a long time, but it's like almost instant.
Yeah, it's just like nothing, right? So yeah. So and then it goes on. I've nearly been killed several times. I've had after my well, okay, this gets into the second part of your question. Um I had basically a 30-year career in advertising and marketing in the newspaper business. And about 12 years ago, when the newspaper business went into the dumper, okay, I ended up, they were giving buyouts, they were cutting staff and everything because the newspaper business was basically dying. And so I took my golden handshake and I left. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Then I found out that I probably wasn't going to be able to get back into my field because of ageism. And so I was freaked out about that. What am I going to do with my life? And then literally 6 months after that, my partner passed away suddenly. So I was my whole world within a 6 month period imploded and exploded at the same time.
Wow.
So that launched me. That launched me onto my healing journey. And I would say the intense part of that healing journey was about a year and a half, year and a half. And that, what I learned through that journey was I opened to my, really opened up my spiritual gifts. And I realized that I no longer, in my advertising career, I really helped companies sell people a lot of stuff that they didn't need. And I really didn't want to sell people stuff they didn't need anymore. Actually wanted to help make people's lives better. So this
Right.
is when I really connected with my gifts. And this is when I started my own spiritual counseling and coaching practice.
Nice. So people often fear intuitive readings because they think they'll hear something scary. How do you help clients shift from fear-based expectations to soul-based understanding?
Well, the big thing is people have to realize the biggest fear in humans is not knowing. Okay. If you know about something, you can deal with it. If you don't know what's happening, that's when real fear takes us over and it becomes um yeah, it becomes you're frozen. You're so fearful because you don't have any idea. What we imagine is always 10 times worse than what actually can happen. So
Right.
that's the starting. That's the starting gate. So once you realize that it's actually better, even if there's some, and you know what? There's nothing. I also help them to realize that we're here. There's no such thing as good and bad. We're just here, or positive and negative. We're here to learn. Okay, it's schoolhouse earth, and we're here to create situations and learn through situations to evolve our soul. So there's really no such thing as good and bad because we learn equally well, no, actually we don't. You just stopped me. I knew I wasn't going to get through that sentence. We actually learn more from very challenging situations than we do when everything's just going along hunky dory.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's
That's
why we come to Earth in the first place, because we do learn on the other side, but it's much, much slower because we learn. And that's why there's literally a lineup to get into planet Earth, into Schoolhouse Earth, because it's so much quicker and easier. Well, I don't know about easier, but it's definitely faster to evolve our souls on Earth than it is if we stayed in spirit. Or
I know
for that
myself.
matter, yeah, anywhere else
I
in the universe.
Right, but I know myself in physical form, I learn better by doing. So I would imagine that
Yes.
same, you know, in
Well,
spiritual.
doing is part of it because whenever there's a challenge, we have to do something to overcome it. So it is in the act of experience. It's really important that people understand that because that takes away a great deal of the fear. Because when you realize it's more fearful not to know than when you know. And there's some things that people don't understand. They think they're going to find out when they die, when they're going to die, or when somebody else is going to die. Spirit does not tell you that information. Okay. And if somebody's telling you that when you're going to die or when somebody else is going to die, they're full of it. Okay. I've been told this over and over by spirit. The best psychics, what we can see is what I call a trajectory. There's a trajectory of things that happen and energies that happen when somebody's getting ready to leave. And we can see that, okay? But nobody can give you the date and time of your death. In fact, I think there's even a line in the Bible that talks about this, okay? I'm pretty sure there is. That nobody can give you the date and time of your passing, okay? And that is one of the biggest things that causes fear in people because they think that they're going to find out something really life threatening, that they're going to be when they're going to pass or when their loved one is going to pass. And like I said, we can see trajectories and we can get an idea of sort of the timeline in terms of when somebody's going to leave, but nobody can tell you the day and time of your death.
Yeah, I agree with that. If someone listening is curious about working with their intuition but feels skeptical, hesitant, or unworthy, what would you want them to know?
Well, I'll tell you, the greatest experience and the clients that I love that come to me, I love working with skeptical clients because they are the greatest. Now, cynical is a different story. I won't work with cynics because cynics just have already made up their mind that they're not going to believe anything. Okay, that's a
Right.
different thing. Okay. But I love skeptical people because skepticism is part of discernment, which a lot of people don't. You're not supposed to swallow things whole. Okay. We're expected to be discerning souls, not just to drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, absolutely. We always have to, what they say, trust but verify.
Exactly. So, because the reason I love skeptics, I'm telling you, usually they're the ones after a session that, they're like, "Oh my God, you knew so much stuff that you couldn't possibly know," and I totally get this now, and it's just fun to work with these people. So I really love skeptics because they're in some ways they're even more satisfying to work with than people who are really awake and who really get this stuff because they're just they're so excited about what they discover.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty cool. Now, what's one thing Spirit wishes more people understood about themselves?
The greatest job that you have coming here to earth is your service that you're providing. Okay. Now, even if that means that you only help one person, you have performed, and even if that one person is only yourself, you have had an exemplary life. Okay. There's so many people that think that they have to come and do all these things and help all these people and have this incredible legacy left behind them. And basically, what I've been told is that's absolute crap. Okay. And people actually hold themselves back from actually fulfilling their mission that or their purpose that they came here to do because they get so caught. That's ego. Okay, that is not spirit, that's ego. They get so caught up in their ego thinking that they have to leave this fantastic legacy and they have to help all these hundreds of people, or they have to find a cure for cancer or whatever it is. Okay, there's nothing wrong with doing those things, but that is not the most important thing. Number one, the most important thing is loving yourself, as we talked about earlier, because if you
Yep.
don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. And the second biggest thing is healing yourself. And of course, then it goes back to number one, because the way you heal yourself is by loving yourself. Do you see that? The way
Yeah,
this
I
works?
like that circle of thought. Yeah. Laura, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your intuition, and your heart with us today. Conversations like this remind us that we're never really walking this path alone. We're supported, guided, and more connected to spirit and to our own inner truth than we often realize. If today's episode stirred something in you, if you felt a spark of recognition, a little nudge in your chest, or even a sense of relief that you're not crazy, you're intuitive, then take that as your sign to keep exploring. I always say healing is a partnership between courage and curiosity. And if you want to dive deeper into your own intuitive path, your soul's purpose, or the emotional patterns that have been holding you back, I encourage you to connect with Laura. You can find all of her offerings at spiritspeaks2.me. And trust me, she's the real deal. And that's Spirit Speaks, the number 2.me. And if you're loving these conversations and want more episodes like this, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating or review and share this with someone who could use a little light right now. Remember, beautiful souls, you're not here to stay stuck. You're here to transform, you're here to rise, and you are so much more powerful and intuitive than you think. We'll see you in the next episode.